What if everything you believed was a lie? The question hangs in the air, sharp and unsettling, as if it were plucked straight from the restless corners of our own minds. Barron Trump steps onto the stage, tall, composed, yet carrying a subtle tension beneath his poised exterior. Every story begins with a moment of honesty, and right now we turn to Barron Trump, as he brings not just his voice to this conversation, but the quiet strength of someone who has lived the very questions we're about to explore. Barron takes his seat across from me, his gaze steady yet guarded. Barron, thank you for being here tonight. I have to ask straight away when you hear that question, what if everything you believe was a lie? What surfaces first in your mind? He takes a breath, deliberate and slow, as if weighing the cost of honesty. It feels less like a hypothetical and more like a quiet reality, he begins, like a shadow that's followed me my whole life. Barron recounts his early years, growing up in the marble corridors of power. From the outside, his life seemed gilded. Private schools, security details, carefully managed appearances. But behind the facade, there was a young boy grappling with the immense weight of expectation. It was as if my future had been pre-written, he explains, a narrative crafted by others before I ever had a chance to understand my own story. People expected me to step into roles, to inherit convictions without question. But what happens when those convictions start to feel foreign to your own heart? He recalls nights spent staring at the ceiling, suffocated by inherited ideologies. I remember thinking, maybe if I just tried harder to believe, it would feel true. But the harder I tried, the more it unraveled. As he grew older, cracks began to show in the carefully constructed world around him. Doubt doesn't arrive as a thunderclap, Barron says quietly. It seeps in, like water through stone, slow, patient, inevitable. He tells of a pivotal moment, an ordinary day scrolling through headlines when he came across a story that painted his family in dark, unrelenting colors. That article wasn't just about them, it felt like it was about me. It forced me to confront a terrifying thought. If their truths are questionable, what does that make mine? Barron's voice tightens, but he doesn't shy away from the discomfort. It was like standing at the edge of a cliff, realizing that the ground beneath you was never solid to begin with. I ask him if he felt anger. He pauses. Not at first. First came fear, then came grief. Only later, much later, did I feel the anger not towards them, but towards myself. For believing without question, for letting others define me. Barron describes the quiet rebellion that followed a rebellion not of headlines, but of inner resolve. He sought out voices different from his own echo chamber, read books that challenged his inherited worldview, and allowed himself to sit with uncomfortable truths. There's a dangerous comfort in certainty, he admits. I had to unlearn that comfort. I had to let go of the idea that certainty is the same as truth. As he speaks, the audience leans in, as if drawn by the raw sincerity of his journey. He shares how small acts of defiance, choosing different friendships, asking forbidden questions, began to build a new foundation beneath him. Rebuilding your belief system, he says, is like learning to walk again, but this time, you choose the direction. We move deeper. I ask him what it feels like to live in the tension between two worlds, the public legacy and the private search for truth. It feels like being split in two, he replies without hesitation. One part of me will always carry the shadows of my family's choices, but the other part, that part fights every day to step into the light of my own making. Barron reveals moments of quiet reconciliation, conversations with people who were once adversaries, and letters he's written but never sent. Not every battle needs to be loud, he reflects. Some of the most profound victories happen in silence. He pauses, then adds, and some truths are not about vindication, but liberation. As we approach the final moments of our conversation, Barron looks not at me, but directly at the audience, as if he wants to speak to each soul individually. If there's one thing I hope you take from my story, he says, it's this. Do not fear the unraveling. When your beliefs begin to fray, do not rush to stitch them back together out of panic. Sit with the threads, examine them, understand where they come from. Only then can you weave something that is truly your own. His words linger, weaving their own silent spell. When Barron stood here tonight, he did not offer us a manifesto or a declaration of certainty. He offered something far braver, an invitation to question. He reminded us that legacy is not destiny, that doubt is not weakness, that even in the long shadow of inherited power, the light of personal truth can still find a way to shine through. And as we close tonight's program, I urge you to carry this with you. Reflect deeply on the quiet battles you fight within your own mind. Not the ones that scream for attention, but the silent storms that brew beneath the surface. Listen closely to the questions you have long silenced, the ones you were too afraid to ask or too weary to confront. Honor them. Honor the raw, untamed courage it takes to even face them. Because life will always offer you 1,000 reasons to cling to comfortable lies, to settle for what feels safe, to blend into the crowd, to choose the well-lit path that promises ease. But it will also, in rare and powerful moments, offer you a fleeting, fragile chance to seek uncomfortable truths. And it is in those moments, those trembling, uncertain moments, where the ground feels like it might give way beneath your feet, that real transformation begins. That's where you discover not who you've been told to be, but who you were always meant to become. Barron's story is not just about him. It is about all of us. It is about the fragile, beautiful, terrifying act of becoming who you truly are, in a world that constantly tries to shape you into something else. His journey reminds us that courage isn't the absence of fear, it's moving forward despite the fear. It's holding steady when every voice around you urges you to fall in line, to let go of your convictions just to find some fleeting comfort. So as you step away from this conversation tonight, remember this: the journey to truth is never a straight line. It is a winding, unpredictable path, carved not by certainty, but by curiosity, by resilience, by the quiet persistence of a searching heart. Walk it bravely, embrace the unknown, cherish the questions, and trust that even when the way forward seems unclear, every step you take with sincerity brings you closer to your true self. And before we part, I want to leave you with one final question. Not just a rhetorical one, but one I genuinely hope you'll answer. If you were in Barron's shoes, standing in that glaring spotlight, faced with a moment that tests not only your faith, but also your integrity under the watchful eyes of millions, what would you have done? Would you have stood firm as Barron did, holding tight to your beliefs even when it felt like the whole world was watching and waiting for you to falter? Or would you have chosen a different path, one perhaps less lonely, but also less true? I would love to hear your thoughts. Share them in the comments below, because this conversation is far from over. In fact, it has only just begun. And until we meet again, keep questioning, keep seeking, keep believing, not in the comfort of easy answers, but in the transformative power of your own relentless search. Because in the end, it's not the answers that shape us, but the courage to keep asking the questions that matter most. Stay curious, stay brave, and as always, stay true to the journey. Let's keep the conversation going. Subscribe, share, and drop your thoughts below. Your perspective is valuable and might inspire others.